So this does lead to the question, right? How do Greens differ from progressive Democrats, right? Because the reality is, if we're just a gradation different, right? If we're just a slight percentage to the left of AOC and Bernie, why are we running in the different party? One answer to that is, I can quote AOC herself, who said in any other country she wouldn't be in the same party as Joe Biden, right? Our two-party system is a major problem, and so that's one of the reasons why we run independent, right? We're an independent political party. We don't believe that our change reason that substantive transformative change can come from within our two capitalist parties. So we're following a long socialist tradition of running independent political campaigns. And again, we're a party and a movement. And we'll get into the movement side when we talk about organizing strategy. But so if we're how do we differ? And while some of our policy slogans may seem similar, or in some cases straight up lifted, like the Green New Deal, which they took from us and then watered down into basically um, social welfare capitalism, where they were paying corporations to do better. There are fundamental differences between green policy and that of progressive capitalists. Starting off, system change versus reforming capitalism. You can't have political democracy without economic democracy, right? You can't expect to have true political democracy if you have a repressive and oppressive and exploitative economic system in which the wealthy are provided more power, more access, where a dollar is, allows them to have more vote than someone who doesn't have as much. So you can't have political democracy without economic democracy. Unless we address capitalism, we're not going to get the real substantive solutions, the real transformation that we need. And the Green Party recognizes that capitalism is by nature exploitative and oppressive, and we advocate for an eco-socialist alternative that centers public ownership and planning and community control. That segues into public ownership versus private profits, right? Most even the progressive Democrats with the Thrive agenda, um, most Democratic climate policy is basically funneling massive amounts of public money, of tax dollars, to corporations to say, pretty please act better, right? We're bribing the corporations to make reforms, and it's a massive money laundering scheme where we're just funneling huge amounts of money into the private sector, into shareholders and CEOs' pockets, and it's not getting passed on to the worker, and it's not getting passed on to our communities. So from climate action to housing to healthcare, green policies center a public and worker ownership, um, and as opposed to paying corporations to be better, and subsidizing the funding for private sector reforms. And then we also call, the other big one is a multi-party democracy versus a two-party oligarchy. Party suppression is voter suppression. When you suppress third parties, independent voices off of the ballot, you're excluding a large portion of the uh, of the of the potential voter pool. And the hope in doing so, when the Democrats and Republicans do this, the hope is that they can coerce you into voting for them because they're better than the other, which other direction they're talking to you from, right? And so the hope is that by suppressing the Green Party, by suppressing the Libertarian Party, by keeping independent voices off of the ballot, um, that you'll have to vote for one of them. But the reality is, the largest voting bloc most elections is non-voters, right? And the reason for that isn't apathy. They would, when you listen to mainstream political analysis, they'd like to have you think that people just don't care. But the reality is, people don't care because people have seen that the game is rigged. People understand that, you know, when they voted time and time again, when they surged Obama into office, he immediately backtracked on all of his progressive policies, right? Protecting Roe versus Wade was all of a sudden no longer a priority, despite being a campaign promise. The public option was never on the table when the ACA was being drafted, despite it being a campaign promise, right? And so people are they're not apathetic. They're alienated. They don't have anyone that speaks to their values. They don't have anyone that's putting forth real solutions. The 2020 campaign was an almost issueless campaign, where Trump just bloviated and Biden said, "I'm not that guy," right? And so party suppression is voter suppression. By suppressing alternative voices, they're silencing people and they're limiting the options that we have. to ones that are acceptable to the capitalist status quo. And true democracy requires a diverse set of political voices to represent our diverse communities. The Green Party calls for a multi-party proportional democracy that empowers rather than a winner-take-all two-party system that encourages the status quo and maintains oligarchy control. You know, there's been all these studies year after year that where it seems like every couple of years a major collegiate institution is shocked to learn that the United States is an oligarchy. But if you look at it, we have been from the beginning, right? When you get past the platitudes and the pretty words at the beginning of our founding documents, what you find is that is a constitution and a government created by oligarchs for oligarchs. Some of our earliest presidents were also some of our wealthiest presidents when you just their incomes to modern standards. And so the two-party system is a by design thing, right? Our government was created to support capital, and this is how you best support capital. If we want to break from that, we really need a diverse multi-party democracy. It will empower our social sphere and our activity in our communities, and give us the potential to realize real change instead of continuing to vote for lesser evils.